We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's good to be here with you to welcome in Shabbat and take a deep breath, especially in these recent weeks as we arrive back at Shabbat at our natural time to re-energize and recharge and renew. We're so glad to be here with you, and especially on this Shabbat of MLK weekend. And as we just sang that we are marching in the light of God, we also welcome in the light of Shabbat. And I'll turn it over to Jenna as we light our Shabbat candles.
So if you have those Shabbat candles, now is the time to light them. Can we join together? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. When we look and we see things are not what they should be, God's counting on me. God's counting on you. When we look and we see things are not what they should be, God's counting on me. God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. When there's big problems to be solved, let's get everyone involved. God's counting on me. God's counting on you. When there's big problems to be solved, let's get everyone involved. God's counting on me. God's counting on you. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through. Hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. Hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, hoping we'll all pull through, me and you. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. Marching, we are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of God. Now we're going to go to Lecha Dodi, which I must have the words for. If you have Mishkan Tefillah in front of you, it's on page
20. Page 20.
Beautiful. Page 20. Fantastic. I la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmianu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad Hashem u'tiferet ve'letehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mikol haberacha merosh mikedem mesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Miktat melesh ir melucha kumetzei mitoch hafecha rav lashevet be'emek habacha vehu yachamol alayich lach. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri kiva orech kumi uri דברי כבוד אדוני, עלייך נגלה לך דודי, לקראת כלה בעיני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה לך דודי, לקראת כלה בעיני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה בעיני שבת נקבלה.
And we'll continue with Baruch Hu, which you can find on page 8 of our prayer book that's online. We invite everyone to please rise. Our prayer, Mariv Aravim, thanks God for the ongoing cycle of sunrise and sunset, for transforming night into day and day into night, for rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light. Following Mariv Aravim, we shift into Ahavat Olam, where we are reminded of God's eternal love for the people of Israel, manifested through the gift of Torah. We are inspired to allow Torah to be the foundation of truth and of love. We reflect on these ideas of light and love, two of the words that I think are most poignant to what Dr. Martin Luther King preached. In his 1963 book, Strength to Love, he wrote that darkness cannot drive out darkness, that only light can do that, and hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. May these words remind us that in a world that at times feels a little too dark and filled with a little too much hate, the power of bringing more light and more love into our world. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, who loves your people, Israel.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha v'chayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'isha'arecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be at one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Standing at the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught, that before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, and the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together, singing ya ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael
We prayed for freedom. We turn our prayer to our prayer for protection and safety. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. God, let us lie down and raise us up to life renewed. Spread over us a shelter of your peace. Ushmor tzeitenu voenu l'chaim l'shalom. God, guard our going and our coming to life and to peace. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people, and over Jerusalem.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Ve'ha'amidenu, Shomarenu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu, Sukat shlomecha. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Leshalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
We'll continue with the blessings of the Amidah. We invite you to rise, and we're on page 15 of our virtual prayer book.
Adonai sfatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avotinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol, Ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'Imahot, U'Mevi Ge'ula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol, Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יחללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Turn our attention to Misha Barach, to our prayer for healing of the body and healing of the spirit. Tonight, we're thinking of those in our TBJ community: Stanley Amsterdam, Cindy Baker, Alan Tilley, Stephen Noxon, Robbie Palermo, Gerard Roos, Arlene Scheininger, Sharon Tillis, and Zohara Aviva Bat Harav Moshe Vaharav Rachel. And we invite you now to take a moment to either say the name out loud, hold in your heart, share it with those around you, or in one of our chats, a name of somebody that you're thinking of who's in need of healing this evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals the sick.
V'sheberach avoteinu mekor habracha ve'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. V'sheberach imotenu mekor habracha avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
And we turn from the healing of the body to the healing of the world. We'll continue with Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon b'chol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon b'chol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Something incredible about Dr. Martin Luther King is the sheer amount of the sound bites of his writing and speaking, the kind of tidbits that we pull out that stick in our minds even decades after we learn them, and the power that he had as a speaker and a preacher. And I think it leaves many of us with some of these quotes, some of these kind of short sayings that stay with us as we navigate through our days. And one that I come back to every year that I hold close to me is the following from his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech. It says, "I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts him. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality." For me, there's something so beautiful about the belief in humans to go past the is and into the ought, to go past the present nature of our world as it is and imagine a future of how the world ought to be. I think there's a lot of power and possibility in the ought. I think it gives a sense of hope and purpose, and a sense that we have the ability to turn the is of inequality, of racism, of injustice, into the ought of equity, of equality, of justice. That the is of hate and darkness can become the ought of love and of light. So with those thoughts of what is and what ought to be in mind, we'll take a few moments to pray silently.
Has anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. Oh, you know, I just looked around and he's gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? But it seems the good die young. Oh, I just looked around and he's gone. Has anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Tell me where he's gone. He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good die young. Oh, you know, I just looked around and he's gone. Didn't you love the things they stood for? Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be free someday soon. It's gonna be one day. Has anybody here seen my old friend Ruth? Can you tell me where she's gone? Oh, I thought I saw her walking up over that hill with Abraham, Martin, and John.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Ooh, I'm just trying to get the chills out of me. That was extraordinary. Saul Simon, who I'm watching everyone here online and make their comments, said, "You made my night." And I agree with you, Saul. That made my night. And there's more to come. Lucy and Matt, that was just incredibly beautiful and so well put together. Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is our tradition on this Shabbat to celebrate the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We have come together annually to honor and remember the impact Dr. King made on our nation. But our hope each of these years is to do more than show appreciation. Our call is to continue to make sure that King's work continues, that his intentions are cultivated, that both his purpose and clarion call are nurtured. Memory means absolutely nothing if we're not called by evenings like this into action. Tonight, like every other MLK Shabbat, this one is generously sponsored by our longtime devoted members, Madeline and Charlie Dreyfus. Besides the immeasurable time and wisdom they have given to TBJ, as board members, as bar bat mitzvah tutors and speechwriters, as president of our congregation, and as confidants to us, to leadership, to clergy. They come to this Shabbat because of and in honor of Madeline's Aunt Esther Theodore. As Erica, one of Madeline and Charlie's daughters, prolifically wrote in an article in the Jewish Chronicle in 2018, and I quote, "A New Yorker from her childhood immigration in 1920 until she died in 2005, Esther taught me about social justice long before I encountered the term. I cannot remember when I didn't know that she marched with Dr. King in the South. I've always perceived her action as a white Jewish woman as exceptional and exceptionally brave. But eventually, I realized that for Esther, marching was a simple matter of doing what was right and following her hero's example. Esther, who had no children of her own, shared an extraordinarily close relationship with my mother. Esther's most prized possessions, including the title page of her copy of King's 1963, Why We Can't Wait, which he autographed for her, are now my mother's. This Shabbat, and she's talking about a couple of years ago, but this Shabbat also, as she does every year at this time, Mom will lend this precious item to our synagogue as part of the annual congregational commemoration of King's life and leadership, which includes a speaker sponsored by my parents and Aunt Esther's memory. So today, for the first time in my 15 years here, we don't have the book because, once again, the coronavirus seems to interrupt traditions, but it's not going to stop us. As you can tell, there is a picture of it on your screen, something so precious. I always worry this year, at least, Madeline, I don't have to worry about somehow not getting it back to you. So it sits with you in New York City. It sits with us on our screen. It sits with us, all of us, on our hearts, indelibly marked on so many of our hearts after all these years. So Madeline and Charlie, thank you. Thank you for everything you do for us, but tonight for this, for leading on what counts the most. This night has brought a long line of eminent speakers to our pulpit. Tonight's, however, in my heart and my mind, are the most eminent. Tonight, I introduce you to Bruce and Rivka Little. Bruce is the Baruch College Technology Center Student Lab Manager. And Charlie, I should have made that connection with Baruch a long time ago. Rivka is the Chief of Staff of the AI identity firm Socure. They are the parents of two of the most extraordinary daughters that exist in this world, Nava, age 20, and Asada, age 15. Asada and Nava are African-American and Jewish. Rivka and Bruce are here to talk to us about the privilege and challenges of raising their daughters as both, and will share with us what we might need to know to help all of us understand differences in our own familial and our own communal circles, and maybe even more important, how that might call on us to make our world more just. Now, just in case you didn't know, Rivka is my baby sister, which I still call her as such, and Bruce, my beautiful brother-in-law. Rivka is the youngest of the four of us, but I've always said the wisest of us all. And she married a man who matches her with equal amounts of wisdom and equal amounts of grace. They reside in Harlem. It is indeed my unique honor to welcome Rivka Gewurtz Little and Bruce Little to our virtual pulpit. Rivka and Bruce, please.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hello.
Such an honor to be here. So we've often teased my brother about speaking about our family in Temple, and now I have the unique honor of being able to start off that way. But every year we're invited to Martin Luther King services, and every year Bruce and I kind of talk about what this means for us. And this year is a different year, and I just want to talk about why. So when I was growing up, my parents drilled into my head the legacy of the Jewish African-American political alignment in the fight for civil rights in the US. My mom had marched and rallied voters, and my dad, differently, lived in a world of theater arts where in his mind, brilliance trumped race, and he lived in a subculture that was integrated long before many others. And as much as I heard about this, the problem was that I saw something very different in action than this storied legacy. My Jewish cousins on Long Island went to good schools. They never thought about hostile or aggressive police, and they never once questioned their right to attend college when they turned 18. Meanwhile, my friends in the neighborhood where we grew up, largely African-American and Latinx, regularly dealt with police harassment, went to underwhelming schools, as did I, often didn't have a straightforward path to college and therefore not to financial empowerment. And I remember being as young as 11 and wondering whether this so-called political alignment was anything more than a Seder story.
Now, granted, I did not grow up in a very diverse background in Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up in a predominantly Black community. So my knowledge and exposure to Jewish and African-American relationships wouldn't start until a little bit later in my early teens, because I was growing up in Houston, Texas by that time. Obviously, I was doing schoolwork and I was learning about the civil rights movement. And I came across the particular case of the 3 civil rights activists who died in Mississippi. Now, we all know about Goodman and Schwerner and Cheney, but that particular story touched me particularly because I understood that, these three men died together, working towards social justice. And nothing says allyship more to me than something like that. I mean, not to, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, if people are willing to put their lives and their body on the line for someone else outside of their community, that says a lot about allyship. So it sounds a little bit that my perspective may have started on Black-Jewish relationships, may start a little bit from the academic point of view, but that's not the case. As I went on as a young activist, I've worked with many Jewish friends towards social justice. And of course, there are the people that are in my life who I love very much.
So whether or not we want to question allyship or the alignment between our two communities, in my mind, the attack that occurred on the Capitol last week is a reminder of why this alignment ever existed and why we're here tonight talking about it. In the face of what appears to be a newly arising white supremacist movement in the US, which appears actually to only be an outburst and representative of something that's been brewing for decades, I'm reminded of how important our allyship is in this current day. The anti-Semitic and the racist messaging seems to be fueling the fire behind a movement that appears to be set on toppling our democracy. And so we can't afford to not question this allyship and understand how to move it forward in some realistic way.
Allyship will, of course, depend a great deal more than just two communities of the Jewish and the Black community. As we saw from those attacks at the Capitol last week, there was a man with a 6 million were not enough t-shirt. There was a hoodie that made mockery of Camp Auschwitz. And of course, there was a man who entered the Capitol with a Confederate flag. We also know that from this crowd, a lot of them have a great deal of hatred espoused against immigrants. And we also know, especially towards Latinx people, and they agree altogether on trying to add now the new racial slur that COVID is caused by Asian people. So what we really need now more than anything else is a broader allyship.
So I think it's important to note that this allyship isn't always natural and it's not without its complications. Not everyone is on board with our particular communities being aligned, and that's in both Jewish and African American camps. We've seen extreme frustration in the African American community with a constant request to teach and train, respect, and discuss Israel, even as men and women in this community are being slayed by police, and that seems like a really far away topic. Meanwhile, we've also seen frustration in the Jewish community about the lack of acceptance of the Israeli agenda in the political agenda of Black Lives Matter.
See, for me, allyship is not transactional, in that if one sees themselves as an ally and has shown up for anti-racist actions, they are not owed a constant oath from the Black community to be the monolithic teacher on what is racism. Now, I think tonight, the best thing that we can do in the spirit of Martin Luther King, Okay. All right, sorry about that. I think that the best thing that we could do in the spirit of Martin Luther King is to ask ourselves to define or redefine allyship.
So in thinking about this, I realized that it's often assumed about me that I'm an ally because I'm the parent of African American children. And when I sat down to ask myself the definition of ally, I realized I didn't have an answer. And so I went to my kids and to my friends and I asked them, and I heard lots and lots of points, but some key ones I want to bring to the table are as following. One person said to me that allyship does not require constant interpersonal race dynamics at a dinner party, at a sleepover. It's not the responsibility of African Americans to always resolve conflicts in common conversation and relationships. Someone else said, parents of African American children by nature have the talk, and it's true. We sit our kids down and we ask them, do they understand what to do if they're confronted with racist or hostile police, if they're attacked on a college campus? And she said, why aren't white parents required to do the same thing, to teach their kids not to show up for those kinds of activities, not to support them and not to allow them. But I want to bring home to this community and to the reform movement in general that allyship starts in our backyard. Anywhere from 7 to 14% of American Jews are people of color, and we often create communities that aren't reflective of those people. I think you can look around yourselves in any congregation and religious school and in Jewish camp and not always see that percentage represented. And that's because we haven't necessarily created a safe and a nurturing space in an active and expansive enough way. And so the Jewish community can begin first by actively making a safe space for what we jokingly call Jews of all hues, or else this road to larger allyship will be blocked.
So what messages can we leave with you today? I hope that we don't stop exploring the work and the spirit of Martin Luther King and his message of unity, of evolution, and of radical empowerment.
I hope that we can show up for each other without being fearful of the messy backroom negotiations that always lie behind any community alignment. Most importantly, in doing so, I hope that getting past this allows us to deliver a loud and clear message to this wave of bigots threatening our nation.
Maybe the best thing that we can leave you with are the words of Martin Luther King when he said, "Almost always, the creative, dedicated minority has made the world better."
Again, thank you for welcoming us.
Thank you.
So, folks, first of all, Rivka and Bruce, thank you. Which feels so funny even formally thanking you in this way. I love you both very, very much. And can't you all see that, there's two blondes and two browns in our family, the four of us, and Rivka and I are the ones who look exactly alike. And here's what so we want to have a little bit of a conversation because we don't always get to do that. And we're only going to take 5 minutes, which I promise you is very different than the 5 hours that would now take place in a family conversation around food and drinks. So we'll keep it to 5 minutes. And if you'd like, we could report back to you what the dinners are like. And whichever one of you wants to take this, I wonder what you think the original allyship was actually based on. And I asked that, Bruce, because you talk about, when people give their lives for each other, that's obviously an allyship. But why were the lives willing to be given in the first place, do you think?
Well, I want to start with Goodman and Schwerner, my reading about them, because I believe that considering their generation as Jewish Americans, I believe that they knew and understood the discrimination that their parents and their grandparents may have gone through. I think that they saw what was happening with African Americans, and of course, understanding that our two groups have two different histories here in the US, but I think that I believe that they identified very strongly with what was going on. And if they felt that their groups have fought and that their group, parents, possibly their grandparents, fought for justice for their group as well as others, which we all know the history of Jewish people and the labor movements here in America. I think that that's the reason why they got involved. And I think that allyship was based on that. Like, if this was done to me, I want to make sure that this isn't done to others.
So beautiful, and I want to highlight for all of you out there that the mistake I think so many make, and it could really be offensive to all sides, is somehow comparing the slavery of Jews in Egypt thousands of years ago and African American slavery only a couple of hundred years ago. And when we make believe that that's actually a connection, I'm not saying that the ethic is not there, but the connection is not as authentic as the one that I think Bruce just spoke to, which is that generations just one or two ago actually were close enough to persecution to be able to understand one another's. I wanted to ask about the transactional part of this, because it's, I think, a really important part of this. What made it go from authentic to transactional?
Well, I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but I think that when we live, being in this country, I think almost everything has become transactional, and the way we live and the way we deal with each other. I'm really not sure. It just seemed that it just something that just sort of happened as it went. I think that the idea that the African American community is a monolith and that we should be on point of being the teachers of racism, it just came out of, it's just the way it happened. But I think that the more that we began to point this out and say that that's not how allyship works, among other things, I think that that's the reason why we're talking about it now, is because as time goes on, we begin to see some of these, I don't know how to put it, degradation of relationships. And, the more we point these things out, the more we can see, oh yeah, that is transactional. It's not right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
For me, it does. What's amazing about that is one of the key things that to me is that how did somehow one race become the explainers, excuse the expression, explainers of racism, right? Mm-hmm. Because, people have been racist towards me, I now get to have the job also of explaining it to you, which, Rivka, you and I have had to talk about, and your old colleague, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who once sort of, derided me, at a place saying, I'm tired of being the person who has to always explain this when I've also bared it. I could take that so much further. I think one of the really important pieces of information we can give people, Rivka, would be for you, so, you're white, you're Jewish, you're raising African-American children, and you also mentioned the ultimate importance of white people having the conversation also with their white children. So if you can, it's a tough question. How do you direct, what is the conversation white people should be having with their white children as they enter the world vis-a-vis this conversation?
So it's an interesting question. I think that the conversation is actually a holistic conversation, and it's two sides of the very same conversation, and that actually reflects what allyship is. So if there's one topic and it's racism on college campuses or how to deal with aggressive or hostile police, there's two sides to that story. Is it happening to you and how do you react to it? Or is it happening around you and how do you not stand for it? And so they're actually parallel conversations. One sometimes feels a little more detrimental because you're sending, on the African-American side, you're sending your kids into the world with fear they may not be returned in one piece. But both are equally important. And I think it's just, it's every perspective on the same topic, and they're all equally valid.
Yeah, equally valid, but somehow we always seem to quantify them and compare them in ways that somehow are trying to make us feel better, assuaging our guilt, etc. I promised 5 minutes, and I have a list of 6 more questions and then 5 more that Lauren sent me in text that she wanted me to ask, but we can do that here. I just noticed on Facebook also that our old friend, just sort of how the world's aligned, Donna Cephas just joined us. So Donna, welcome. We love you, and we love the conversations we've had with you and Derek over the years from our old stomping grounds at Erev Shalom. So Bruce and Rivka, again, I and Lauren and our kids love you guys, and Asada and Rivka. And one of the things I wanted to say, which I promised myself this would not be a night that I shed tears to embarrass anyone in my family. But Rivka and Bruce made us aunts and uncles before anyone did. So the youngest produced first and have continued to lead and teach us on so many different levels. And you guys have been activists on all the important levels that I look up to in life. So thank you for sharing. And I hope we'll do this more in even more in-depth ways. You guys are awesome and really taught us a lot tonight. So Shabbat Shalom, and pay the Dreyfuses, and more importantly, Aunt Esther, who's I'm sure hanging out with Tabitha, doing their thing up there, and of course, Martin Luther King. So lots of love and thank you on behalf of the congregation.
Shabbat Shalom.
Leah, please.
I'm going to transition now back to our liturgy. We continue with the words of Aleinu, and if you are able, we invite you to please rise. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We now come to the words of Mourner's Kaddish, the words that honor the lives of those in our families and our community who we have lost. Tonight, we're in a period of Shiva for Ronald Juster, husband of Elaine, father of Alexandra and Jeff and Joshua and Samantha, and grandfather of Gemma, Casey, and Logan. And we're saddened to announce the passing of Elizabeth Marie Frankel, partner of Thomas, daughter of Michael and Joan, stepmother of Katie, and sister of Sarah and Ben, and Jonathan and Catherine. We're in a period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning for Martin Dringle, Annette Feldman, and Paul Fisher. And it's the yard site, the anniversary of the passing of Helen Altman, Ben Asparer, Mathilde Weil-Beck, Frederick Kenneth Becker, David H. Bierman, Gwen Schaffman Block, Jules L. Clayman, Charlotte Mulman Cohen, Robert Cohen, Sylvia Cooper, Stephen E. Curtis, Rabbi Emil Davidovic, Esther Eisenberg, Walter Essenfeld, Julius Feldman, H. Phoebe Fink, Erwin S. Francis, David Freinberg, Diane C. Freed, Dr. Donald K. Gilbert, Louis Goldfein, Meyer Leo Goldman, Evelyn Goldsmith, Wallace Green, Dr. Edward L. Gruben, Jerry Harwood, Hilda Israel, Gustav Kahn, Amelia S. Kolb, Hermance Weil Kramer, Nettie Kranstor, Myron M. Kreidel, Georgia Kronberg, Matilda Metzger, Donald L. Morchauer, Dr. Herman S. Nash, Clara Bell Nussbaum, Lesser Osberg, Jack Perlman, Gabriel Pivauer, Miriam Rand, Alvin M. Rickel, Joan Rocker Newman, Johanna Roos, William Isaac Rosenthal, Samuel Rothfeld, Chester A. Rubin, Frederick H. Samuels, Louis A. Schenken, Arthur H. Schlosser, Ignatz Schoenwalter, Perry Shore, Maud N. Schwartz, Joseph Lazarus Silverman, Robert S. Suntimer, Samuel Weinberg, Rose C. Wexler, Herman A. Wittenberg, and Lillian Zissou. We join together as one sacred community as we recite the words of Mourner's Kaddish. It can be found on your screen. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei almayah, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudasha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'oma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. And before we conclude our service, we have a few things coming up that I specifically want to highlight. They're all in your order of worship, which you can find online, but I specifically want to highlight our adult ed session on Sunday, which continues our racial justice education series. We did a number of sessions a little bit earlier, I guess last year, but we're continuing this week. We have a guest speaker. Her name is Tema Smith. She's a diversity advocate and educator, and she's going to be teaching and guiding a discussion on a deeper dive into the writings on civil rights from the 60s and what it means for the fight for Black lives today. So it's going to be, I think, a really great session, and you can register for that on our website. We also have lots more going on. Check it all out online on your order of worship, and hope to see you soon. And we'll continue with Kiddush and Motzi.
So if you have a Kiddush cup full of grape juice or wine, we invite you to lift it with us now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila mikrae kodesh, zecher litziat mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. V'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim. And we'll continue with Motzi. I am obligated to tell you that this is a homemade challah made by my wonderful husband Eli. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. As we prepare to conclude, we're going to conclude with the words of "We Shall Overcome" in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. And this weekend that we honor his memory. Before the service, all the clergy were lamenting the fact that our kindergartners are not here with us singing this song. We hope that in future years they will be back joining with us. But Mrs. Kessler's class, we miss you. We wish that you were here with us singing this song, and we are hoping that we will do you justice when we sing this. So please do join with us, and Shabbat Shalom to all. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. God is on our side. God is on our side. God is on our side this day. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Have a wonderful weekend.